Plus course. Is hardware or software causing the problem? A hardware problem often rears its ugly head when some device in your computer skips a beat and or dies. This one's pretty easy to discern because when you try to do something requiring the particular piece of hardware, you can't do it, and instead you get an error telling you that you can't do it. Even if your hard disk fails, you probably get warning signs before it actually kicks in, like a disk I/O error or something similar. Other problems drop out of the sky and hit you like something from the wrong end of a seagull. No warning at all, just splash. Components that were humming along fine a second ago can and do suddenly fail, usually at the worst possible time, leaving you with a mess of lost data, files, everything. You get the idea. Solutions to hardware problems usually involves one of three things: changing hardware settings, updating device drivers, replacing dead hardware. If your hardware has truly failed, it's time to get out your tools and start replacing components. If this isn't one of your skills, you can either send the device out for repair or replace it. Your mantra here is backup, backup, backup. Because in either case, a system could go down for a while, anywhere from an hour to several days. So it's always good to keep backup hardware around. And I know everyone and your mama has told you this, but here is one more time: back up all data, files, hard drive, everything, and do so on a regular basis. Software problems are muddier water. Sometimes you'll get general protection fault messages which indicate a Windows or Windows program or other platform error of some type, and other times the program you're working in will suddenly stop responding and hang. At their worst, they cause your machine to randomly lock up on you. When this type of things happens, I'd recommend visiting the manufacturer's support site to get software updates and patches or something for the answer in a knowledge base. Sometimes you get lucky and the ailing software will tell the truth by giving you a precise message about the source of the problem. Messages saying the software is missing a file or a file has become corrupt are a great way, because you can usually get your problem fixed fast by providing that missing file or by reinstalling the software. Neither solution takes very long, but the downside is that whatever you were doing before, the program host will probably be at least partially lost. So again, back up your stuff and save your data often. Is it a workstation or server problem? The first thing you've got to determine when troubleshooting this kind of problem is whether it's only the person or the whole group that's been affected. If the answer is only one person, think a single workstation. Solving the issue will be pretty straightforward. More than that, and your problem involves a chunk of the network like a segment. A clue that the source of your grief is the latter case is if there's a whole bunch of users complaining that they can't discover neighboring devices nodes. So either way, what do you do about it? Well, if it's a single user situation, your first line of defense is to try and log in from another workstation within the same group of users. If you can do that, the problem is definitely the user's workstation. So look for things like cabling faults, a bad NIC, power issues and OSs. But if the whole department can't access a specific server, take a good hard look at the particular server and start by checking all the user connections to it. If everyone is logged in correctly, the problem may have something to do with the individual rights or permissions. If no one can log into that server, including you, the server probably has a communication problem with the rest of the network, and if the server has totally crashed, you'll either see messages telling you all about it on the server's monitor, or you'll find its screen completely blank, screaming indicators that the server is no longer running. And keep in mind that these symptoms do vary among network operating systems. Which segments of the network are affected? Figuring this out can be a little tough. If multiple segments are affected, you may be dealing with a network address conflict. If you're running Transmission Control Protocol, Internet Protocol, TCP/IP, remember that IP addresses must be unique across an entire network. So if your two segments have the same static IP subnet address assigned, you'll end up with duplicate IP errors, an ugly situation that can be a real bear to troubleshoot and can make it tough to find the source of the problem. If all your network users are experiencing a problem, it could be a server everyone access. Thank the powers that be if you nail it down to that, because if not, other network devices like your main router or hub may be down, making network transmission impossible, usually meaning that a lot more work on your part to fix. Adding wide area network WAN connections to the mix can complicate matters exponentially, and you don't want to go there if you can avoid it. So start by finding out if stations on both sides of a WAN link can communicate. If so, get the champagne. Your problem isn't related to the WAN, but if those stations can't communicate, it's not a happy thing. You've got to check everything between the sending station and the receiving one, including the WAN hardware, to find the culprit. The good news is that most of the time WAN devices have built-in diagnostics to tell you whether a WAN link is working okay, which really helps you determine if the failure has something to do with the WAN link itself or with the hardware involved instead. Is it bad cabling? Back to hooking up correctly. Once you've figured out whether your plight is related to one workstation, a network segment, or the whole Tamil network, you must then examine the relevant cabling. Are the cables properly connected to the correct port? Maybe then once I've seen a digital subscriber line DSL modem connection to the wall cabled all wrong. It's an easy mistake to make and an easy one to fix, and you know that nothing lasts forever, so check those patch cables running between a workstation and a wall jack. Just because they don't come with an expiration dates written on them doesn't mean they don't expire. They do go bad, especially if they get moved, trampled on, tripped over a lot. I'd tell you that it's a bad idea to run cabling across the floor, didn't I? Connection problems are the tell here. If you check the NIC and there's no link light blinking, you may have a bad patch cable to blame. It gets murkier if your cable in the walls or ceilings is toast and hasn't been installed correctly. Maybe you've got a user or two telling you the place is haunted because they only have problems with their workstations after dark when the lights go on. Haunted. No, some genius probably ran a network cable over fluorescent light, which is something that just happens to produce a lot of an electromagnetic interference, EMI, which can really mess up communications in that cable. Next on your list is to check the medium dependent interface crossover MDI/MDIX port setting on small workgroup hubs and switches. This is a potential source of trouble that's often overlooked, but it's important because this port is one that's used to uplink to a switch on the network's backbone. First, understand that the port setting has to be either set to MDI or MDIX depending on the type of cable used for your hub-to-hub or switch-to-switch connection. For instance, the crossover cables I talked about way back in Chapter 3, network topologies and connectors and wiring standards require that the port be set to MDI, and a standard network patch cable requires that the port to be set to MDIX. You can usually adjust the setting via a regular switch or a dual inline package dip switch. To be sure, if you're still using hubs, check the hubs documentation. So I'm going to leave it here today for this video. If you like listening, please consider sharing and subscribing. Thank you.